The morning sun cast long shadows across Buckingham Palace as Catherine stood before the ornate mirror in her private chambers. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced the edges of the black mourning dress she had worn for the past month. King Charles had passed away suddenly from a heart attack during a routine meeting with Commonwealth leaders, leaving the entire nation in shock. The palace had been draped in black for weeks, but today marked a turning point. Today, Catherine would be crowned queen, and with her coronation would come the most controversial decision in recent royal history. She would wear the legendary Kohinoor diamond, a jewel that had not adorned a British monarch's crown for over 70 years. Catherine's lady-in-waiting, Margaret, entered the room carrying a velvet box. Inside lay the newly modified crown, with the Kohinoor diamond sitting prominently at its center. The massive stone caught the morning light and seemed to pulse with an inner fire. Catherine had insisted on this change despite fierce opposition from government officials and Commonwealth representatives. "Your Majesty," Margaret whispered, using the title that still felt foreign to Catherine's ears. "The Prime Minister is here to discuss the final arrangements." Prime Minister Harrison entered with a grave expression. He had been against the Kohinoor decision from the beginning, knowing it would cause diplomatic storms with India, Pakistan, and other former colonies who had long demanded the diamond's return. "Ma'am, I must ask one final time," Harrison said carefully. "Are you certain about proceeding with the Kohinoor? The Indian High Commissioner has already issued a formal protest, and social media is exploding with criticism." Catherine turned from the mirror, her blue eyes reflecting the same determination that had carried her through years of royal duties. "Prime Minister, my husband William and I discussed this extensively before his deployment. The monarchy must evolve, and sometimes that means making difficult decisions that honor both our history and our future." She walked to the window, overlooking the gardens where thousands of people had already gathered despite the early hour. King Charles believed in modernizing the monarchy while respecting tradition. This coronation will mark a new chapter where we acknowledge the complex history of the crown jewels while moving forward as a united Commonwealth. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, with respect, the international backlash could be severe. President Modi has already called for emergency talks, and the Pakistani government has threatened to boycott the Commonwealth Games." Catherine picked up the crown, feeling its weight, not just the physical pounds of gold and precious stones, but the weight of centuries of history, conquest, and controversy. The Kohinoor has been part of the British crown jewels since 1849. It was gifted to Queen Victoria by the East India Company after the annexation of Punjab. Today I wear it not as a symbol of conquest, but as an acknowledgement of our shared history and a commitment to a more collaborative future. The Archbishop of Canterbury arrived for final preparations, his robes rustling as he reviewed the ceremony details. Unlike previous coronations, Catherine had insisted on several changes to the traditional service. Representatives from India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran, all countries with historical claims to the Kohinoor, had been invited as honored guests. "The ceremony will begin in 3 hours, the Archbishop announced. "Your Majesty, the BBC estimates that over 2 billion people worldwide will be watching. This will be the most watched royal event in modern history." Catherine nodded, understanding the magnitude of the moment. She had spent weeks preparing for this day, studying the history of every previous monarch who had worn the Kohinoor, from the Mughal emperors who first possessed it, to the Sikh rulers who lost it to the British, to Queen Victoria who displayed it prominently in her crown. William's absence weighed heavily on her heart. As heir to the throne, he should have been by her side, but his military deployment to Eastern Europe could not be abandoned. They had spoken by secure video call the night before, and his words echoed in her mind. "You're not just becoming Queen of Britain, Catherine. You're becoming a symbol of how we can honor the past while building a better future." Margaret helped Catherine into her ceremonial robes, each layer adding to the gravity of the moment. The coronation gown had been specially designed to incorporate silk from each Commonwealth nation, a subtle but powerful symbol of unity. As the final preparations continued, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had married into the royal family as a commoner, faced years of scrutiny and criticism, and had slowly earned the respect of the British people through her dedication to charitable work and her genuine care for the Commonwealth. Now, at 39 years old, She was about to become the youngest queen to wear the Kohinoor diamond since Queen Victoria herself. The sounds of crowds gathering outside grew louder. Street vendors called out their wares, television crews tested their equipment, and security personnel made final sweeps of the area. Inside the palace, staff members hurried through corridors, ensuring every detail was perfect for the historic day ahead. As Catherine took one last look at herself in the mirror, crown upon her head, she whispered a prayer for wisdom and strength. The Kohinoor diamond seemed to wink at her in the reflection, as if acknowledging the weight of the decision she had made. In just a few hours, she would walk into Westminster Abbey and emerge as Queen Catherine, wearing the most controversial jewel in royal history. The streets of London buzzed with unprecedented energy as millions gathered for Queen Catherine's coronation. Hyde Park had been transformed into a massive viewing area where families spread picnic blankets and waited with anticipation. However, the atmosphere was far from purely celebratory. Protesters had also arrived in significant numbers, carrying banners demanding the return of the Kohinoor diamond to its countries of origin. Dr. Priya Sharma, a historian from Delhi University, stood among a group of peaceful demonstrators near Parliament Square. She held a sign reading, "Return the Mountain of Light," the English translation of Kohinoor. "This diamond was taken from our ancestors," she explained to a BBC reporter. "It belongs in a museum in India, not on the head of a British queen." Nearby, a different group of supporters waved Union Jack flags and cheered for their new queen. Mrs. Eleanor Thornton, an elderly woman from Yorkshire, had traveled to London specifically for the coronation. "Queen Catherine has always been different," she told anyone who would listen. "She cares about doing what's right even when it's difficult. If she says wearing that diamond will help bring countries together, then I believe her." Inside Westminster Abbey, the most powerful leaders from around the world took their seats. The guest list read like a United Nations assembly, but the tension was palpable. Indian Prime Minister Modi sat stiffly, having arrived in London with a formal diplomatic protest. Pakistani President Khan maintained a stern expression, while representatives from Afghanistan and Iran whispered among themselves. The Archbishop of Canterbury made final preparations at the altar where British monarchs had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. Today's ceremony would be different from any previous coronation. Catherine had insisted on several unprecedented changes that reflected her vision of a modern monarchy. At exactly 11 o'clock, the doors of Westminster Abbey opened. The royal guard, dressed in their traditional red uniforms, formed perfect lines as the coronation procession began. Catherine appeared at the entrance, and a collective gasp arose from the congregation. The Kohinoor diamond, set prominently in St. Edward's crown, caught the light from the Abbey's ancient windows and seemed to glow with inner fire. Catherine walked slowly down the aisle, her train carried by 8 young people representing different Commonwealth nations. Among them was Aisha Patel, a 16-year-old British Indian student from Birmingham, and Muhammad Ali, a Pakistani refugee who had become a British citizen just 2 years earlier. This inclusion was Catherine's way of acknowledging the complex heritage of the Commonwealth. As she passed the seated dignitaries, Catherine made brief eye contact with Prime Minister Modi. Instead of the hostile glare she expected, she saw something else in his expression: curiosity, perhaps even a hint of respect. The Pakistani president remained stone-faced, but his young daughter, seated beside him, smiled shyly at the queen-to-be. Prince William watched from a secure military base in Poland via live video feed, his heart swelling with pride and concern. He understood the risks Catherine was taking, but he also knew her strength and wisdom. Their children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, sat in the front row with their grandmother, the Princess of Wales, their young faces showing both excitement and nervousness. The ceremony began with traditional hymns, but Catherine had requested specific additions. A choir from the Royal Commonwealth Society sang in Hindi, Urdu, and Persian, languages historically associated with the Kohinoor diamond. The music created an ethereal atmosphere that seemed to bridge centuries and cultures. Archbishop Williams approached Catherine with the crown. As he lifted it high for all to see, the Kohinoor diamond caught the light streaming through the Abbey's stained glass windows. The moment felt both historic and revolutionary. For the first time in decades, the controversial gem would rest upon the head of a British monarch. "Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the people of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and your other realms and territories to your power, according to their respective laws and customs? The Archbishop asked. I solemnly promise so to do, Catherine replied, her voice clear and strong enough to reach every corner of the ancient abbey. The traditional questions continued, but Catherine had requested one addition that sent ripples through the international community. Will you endeavor to heal the wounds of history and seek reconciliation with all peoples affected by the Crown's past actions? I will, Catherine responded firmly, looking directly at the international delegation. As the moment of coronation approached, the abbey fell completely silent. Outside, millions held their breath. The Archbishop raised the crown containing the Kohinoor diamond and slowly, ceremoniously, placed it upon Catherine's head. The moment the crown touched her head, cheers erupted from the British supporters in the abbey. While the international guests remained diplomatically silent, Catherine felt the weight of the crown, not just its physical mass, but the enormous responsibility it represented. Prime Minister Modi leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. The Pakistani delegation remained motionless, but in that moment Catherine did something unprecedented. She stood from the coronation chair and walked toward the international section of the abbey, speaking clearly so her words would carry to every corner of the ancient building and to the billions watching worldwide. She said, I wear this crown and this diamond not as symbols of conquest, but as reminders of our shared history and our commitment to a shared future. The Kohinoor has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the suffering and triumph of peoples. Today it witnesses a new beginning. The immediate aftermath of Queen Catherine's coronation sent shockwaves across the globe. Within hours of the ceremony, social media platforms exploded with reactions ranging from praise to outrage. The hashtag #Kohinoor Queen became the most trending topic worldwide, with over 50 million posts in the first 12 hours. In New Delhi, protesters gathered outside the British High Commission, demanding an immediate audience with the new queen. However, the response was not uniformly negative. Dr. Rajesh Gupta, a prominent Indian historian, appeared on national television with a surprising perspective. Queen Catherine's words about shared history and commitment to the future suggest a different approach than previous monarchs. Perhaps this is an opportunity for dialogue rather than confrontation. The real test came 72 hours after the coronation, when Queen Catherine made an unprecedented announcement. She would embark on a Commonwealth tour, but with a twist that no one saw coming. Her first stop would not be Canada or Australia, as tradition dictated, but India, Pakistan, and Iran, the three nations with the strongest historical claims to the Kohinoor diamond. Prime Minister Harrison was beside himself. Your Majesty, this is diplomatic suicide, he argued during an emergency cabinet meeting. The security risks alone are enormous, and the political implications could destroy decades of careful international relationships. Catherine sat calmly at the head of the cabinet table, the weight of the crown replaced by the even heavier burden of her convictions. Prime Minister King Charles often spoke about the Commonwealth needing bold leadership. We cannot continue to ignore the elephant in the room, or should I say the diamond in the crown. Foreign Secretary Williams pulled up intelligence reports on her tablet. Ma'am, our embassies report mixed reactions. The Indian government is officially maintaining its protest, but there are back-channel communications suggesting interest in private discussions. Pakistan is more complicated. President Khan faces domestic pressure to reject any meeting, but there are indications he might be willing to engage. The Queen's private secretary, Sir Michael Thompson, had been working around the clock coordinating with Commonwealth offices. Your Majesty, I've received preliminary responses from all three governments. India is willing to host a formal state visit, but they want guarantees about the agenda. Pakistan has agreed to talks but insists they must be held on neutral ground. Iran has been the most receptive, surprisingly. Catherine nodded thoughtfully. The Iranian response intrigued her because the Kohinoor's earliest recorded history placed it in Persian hands. The diamond had allegedly been part of the peacock throne of the Mughal emperors, itself influenced by Persian artistic traditions. Prince William called from his military base that evening, the secure connection allowing them to speak privately for the first time since the coronation. Catherine, the whole world is talking about what you did in the Abbey. I'm proud of you, but I'm also worried. This tour you're planning sounds incredibly dangerous. William, we both know that real change requires real risks, Catherine replied, sitting in the same room where she had prepared for her coronation just days earlier. I've been reading the letters King Charles left behind. He believed the monarchy's greatest challenge was remaining relevant in a world that increasingly questions the value of inherited privilege. She picked up a leather-bound journal from her desk. Charles wrote extensively about the Kohinoor. He called it the most beautiful burden in the crown jewels. He understood that keeping it without acknowledgement of its history was becoming unsustainable. The preparations for the Commonwealth tour became a diplomatic dance of unprecedented complexity. The Queen's security detail had to coordinate with intelligence services from multiple countries, each with their own concerns and protocols. The media attention was intense, with every major news network planning extensive coverage. Dr. Amara Hassan, a Pakistani-British academic specializing in colonial history, was invited to join the Queen's advisory team for the tour. During their first meeting at Buckingham Palace, she offered crucial insights, Your Majesty. The key to success will be demonstrating that you understand the Kohinoor represents more than just a valuable diamond. To millions of people, it symbolizes centuries of cultural extraction and domination. Catherine listened intently. Dr. Hassan, what would meaningful acknowledgement look like? I want to do more than just offer words. That's exactly the right question, Dr. Hassan replied. Previous British officials have always approached this as a legal matter. Who owns what according to international law? But this is really about cultural respect and historical justice. The people want to see that you understand their emotional and spiritual significance of what was taken. The Queen's team worked with historians and cultural experts to develop an itinerary that would be both diplomatically appropriate and personally meaningful. The plan called for visits to museums, universities, and cultural sites directly connected to the Kohinoor's history. Meanwhile, public opinion in Britain itself remained divided. A YouGov poll showed 43% of Britons supported the Queen's approach, 37% opposed it, and 20% remained undecided. The generational divide was stark. Younger Britons largely supported Catherine's initiative, while older citizens worried about the precedent it might set. Lord Pemberton, a hereditary peer and vocal critic of the Queen's plans, appeared on BBC Question Time. This sets a dangerous precedent. If we acknowledge every historical grievance about the crown jewels, where does it end? Should we empty the British Museum while we're at it? But Catherine had anticipated such criticism. In a carefully crafted speech to Parliament, she addressed the concerns directly. Some ask where acknowledgement of historical wrongs might lead. I would ask instead, where has the refusal to acknowledge them led us? To decades of resentment, missed opportunities for deeper partnerships, and a Commonwealth that sometimes feels more like a reminder of division than a celebration of cooperation. As the departure date for the tour approached, Catherine made one final decision that surprised even her closest advisors. She announced that she would not travel with the Kohinoor diamond. It would remain in London, in the Tower of London, where visitors could see it alongside a new exhibition detailing its complete history, including the perspectives of all the cultures that had possessed it throughout the centuries. Queen Catherine's royal aircraft touched down at Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport on a humid Tuesday morning, marking the first time a British monarch had visited India, specifically to address the Kohinoor controversy. The reception was unlike anything in royal history. Thousands of people lined the streets, but their signs and banners reflected the nation's divided feelings about her visit. Prime Minister Modi greeted Catherine at the airport with formal diplomatic courtesy, but the real test would come in the private meetings that followed. The Queen had requested to visit the Red Fort first, the historic Mughal palace where the Kohinoor diamond had once been displayed as part of the magnificent peacock throne. Dr. Arjun Malik, director of the National Museum, personally guided Catherine through the Red Fort's halls. Your Majesty, he explained as they stood in the Diwan-e-Khas, this is where Shah Jahan, the builder of the Taj Mahal, held court. The peacock throne sat here, decorated with the Kohinoor and countless other precious gems. Catherine ran her fingers along the marble walls, imagining the splendor that once filled these chambers. Dr. Malik, help me understand something. When the diamond was part of the peacock throne, what did it represent to the people of that time? It was considered the mountain of light, A divine blessing that validated the emperor's right to rule, Dr. Malik replied. But it was also believed to bring misfortune to male rulers who possessed it. Only women could wear it safely, according to legend. The irony was not lost on Catherine. She was the first woman to wear the Kohinoor as part of a coronation crown in over 70 years. And perhaps the first to wear it while genuinely trying to heal the wounds its possession had created. That evening, Catherine attended a private dinner with Prime Minister Modi and several cultural leaders. The conversation was frank and sometimes uncomfortable. Sushma Patel, a prominent activist, spoke directly. "Your Majesty, many of us appreciate your willingness to visit, but words alone cannot undo centuries of cultural theft. What concrete actions will follow this tour?" Catherine had prepared for this moment. "Ms. Patel, I propose something that has never been tried before. I want to establish a joint cultural commission, with equal representation from Britain and the countries with historical claims to the Kohinoor. This commission would oversee a rotating exhibition program, allowing the diamond to spend time in museums across all the nations connected to its history." The room fell silent. Prime Minister Modi leaned forward. "Are you suggesting the diamond would actually travel to India?" "I'm suggesting more than that," Catherine replied. "I'm proposing that we create a new model for handling contested cultural artifacts. The Kohinoor would spend 2 years in each location, London, Delhi, Lahore, Kabul, and Tehran, as part of comprehensive exhibitions that tell its complete story from every perspective." Dr. Meera Sharma, a historian from Jawaharlal Nehru University, looked skeptical. "Your Majesty, how would this work practically? Who would own the diamond legally?" Catherine smiled. "That's exactly the kind of question the old approach would focus on. I'm suggesting we move beyond ownership to stewardship. Britain would maintain legal title, but practical custody would rotate among the participating nations. Each location would be responsible for security and insurance during their exhibition period." The proposal was revolutionary. Never before had Britain offered to allow any of the crown jewels to leave the country for extended periods. The conversation continued late into the night, with lawyers, historians, and diplomats working through countless details. From Pakistan, the initial response was cautiously positive. President Khan, facing domestic pressure but recognizing the historic opportunity, agreed to host Catherine in Lahore, the capital of the ancient Punjab region where the Kohinoor had been possessed by Sikh rulers. Before British acquisition, the visit to Lahore proved even more emotional than Delhi. Catherine toured the Shalimar Gardens, built by the same Mughal emperor who had owned the Kohinoor. Local artisans demonstrated traditional gem-cutting techniques that had been used on the diamond centuries earlier. Fatima Ahmed, a young Pakistani student, approached Catherine during a university visit. "Your Majesty, my grandmother told me stories about the Kohinoor. She said it was like a piece of our soul that was taken away. Do you really think your plan can bring it back to us?" Catherine knelt down to speak at the student's eye level. "Fatima, I think the diamond belongs to all of us, to everyone whose ancestors touched its history. My hope is that by sharing it, we can honor everyone who has been part of its story." The most surprising reception came in Tehran, where Catherine met with President Rouhani and cultural officials. Iran's connection to the Kohinoor predated even the Mughal period, tracing back to ancient Persian empires. The Iranian government had been quietly supportive of Catherine's initiative, seeing an opportunity to showcase their own rich cultural heritage. Dr. Cyrus Hosseini, curator of the National Jewelry Treasury, showed Catherine replicas of ancient Persian crown jewels. "Your Majesty, the Persians have always believed that great gems carry the memories of all who have possessed them. Perhaps the Kohinoor remembers its time in Isfahan and yearns to return, even briefly." Each stop on the tour generated enormous media coverage, but Catherine insisted on including visits to ordinary citizens, not just government officials. She met with jewelers, historians, artists, and students who shared their personal connections to the diamond story. The technical logistics of the proposed arrangement required months of negotiation. Insurance companies balked at the idea of transporting the priceless diamond internationally. Security experts from multiple nations had to develop unprecedented protocols. Museums needed to upgrade their facilities to meet the highest international standards. But perhaps the most significant challenge was internal. Back in London, The House of Lords scheduled emergency debates about the Queen's proposals. Lord Ashford, speaking for the opposition, declared, "This sets a precedent that could see our entire cultural heritage scattered to the winds. Today it's the Kohinoor. Tomorrow it could be the Elgin marbles." Catherine returned to London after 6 weeks abroad, carrying with her signed agreements in principle from all 4 nations. The final details would take months to negotiate, but the framework for an unprecedented cultural partnership was in place. However, the real test would come when she faced Parliament and the British people with her radical vision for the Crown Jewel's future. The House of Commons had never witnessed a scene quite like it. Queen Catherine stood before Parliament, not for the traditional ceremonial state opening, but to defend her revolutionary proposal for the Kohinoor diamond. The ancient chamber buzzed with tension as MPs from all parties prepared for a debate that would reshape Britain's relationship with its colonial past. Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, called for order as Catherine began her address. "Honorable members, I stand before you today not as someone seeking to diminish Britain's heritage, but as someone committed to expanding it. The question before us is not whether we should acknowledge the complex history of the crown jewels, but how we can do so in a way that strengthens rather than weakens our Commonwealth partnerships." Conservative MP James Worthington immediately stood to challenge her. "Your Majesty, with the greatest respect, this proposal essentially means giving away one of our most precious national treasures. What guarantee do we have that the Kohinoor will ever return to British soil once it begins this traveling exhibition?" Catherine had anticipated this concern. "Mr. Worthington, the legal framework we've developed ensures that Britain retains ownership while sharing stewardship. The diamond would return to London every 5 years for major royal ceremonies. More importantly, this arrangement transforms a source of international tension into a symbol of cooperation." The debate continued for hours, with MPs raising practical concerns about security, insurance, and precedent. But Catherine's most powerful ally emerged from an unexpected source: the Archbishop of Canterbury, who addressed Parliament as a guest speaker. "Honorable members," Archbishop William said, "during the Queen's coronation, she took an oath to seek reconciliation with all peoples affected by the Crown's past actions. This proposal represents the fulfillment of that sacred promise. The Kohinoor has been a source of division for too long. Her Majesty offers us a path toward healing." Meanwhile, public opinion was shifting in Catherine's favor. A petition supporting the traveling exhibition had gathered over 2 million signatures, with particularly strong support from younger Britons and immigrant communities. Sarah Khan, a British Pakistani teacher from Birmingham, organized rallies across England. "Queen Catherine is showing us what real leadership looks like. She's not afraid to do what's right even when it's difficult." The technical preparations moved forward even as political debates continued. The Tower of London's security systems received massive upgrades to accommodate the new exhibition spaces that would house the Kohinoor between its international travels. Insurance companies, initially reluctant, eventually agreed to cover the diamond's journeys after the participating governments agreed to share liability costs. Dr. Elizabeth Crawford, the newly appointed director of the International Crown Jewels Commission, worked 18-hour days coordinating between 5 different governments. "The complexity is extraordinary," she explained to a BBC documentary crew. "We're not just moving a diamond, we're creating a new model for international cultural cooperation." The first test came sooner than expected. A group of radical protesters attempted to storm the Tower of London, demanding immediate return of the Kohinoor to India without any British involvement. The incident was quickly contained, but it highlighted the passionate emotions surrounding the diamond's fate. Queen Catherine visited the tower personally to inspect the new exhibition space. The display had been completely reimagined, telling the Kohinoor's story through interactive exhibits, historical documents, and perspectives from all the cultures that had possessed it. Visitors could learn about ancient Persian legends, Mughal craftsmanship, Sikh warrior traditions, and British colonial history. "This is what reconciliation looks like," Catherine told the museum's board of trustees. "Not erasing history, but presenting it honestly and completely." Prince William returned from his military deployment just as the final parliamentary vote approached. His presence provided crucial support for Catherine's initiative. Speaking to a joint session of Parliament, he declared, My wife has shown courage that will define our monarchy for generations. The easy path would have been to ignore the controversy surrounding the Kohinoor. Instead, she has chosen to face it head-on and find a solution that honors everyone's heritage. The parliamentary vote was closer than expected. 298 MPs supported the Queen's proposal, while 267 opposed it. The narrow margin reflected deep divisions within British society about how to address colonial legacy issues. However, the legal framework was now in place for the revolutionary arrangement. Prime Minister Modi was the first international leader to formally congratulate Catherine on the parliamentary approval. In a video call, he told her, "Your Majesty, this decision demonstrates that Britain is ready to be a true partner rather than a former colonial power. India looks forward to hosting the Kohinoor in our National Museum." But the celebration was tempered by concerning intelligence reports. MI6 warned that several extremist groups, both in Britain and abroad, were planning to disrupt the diamond's first international journey. The security implications of transporting the world's most famous diamond across continents were staggering. Catherine faced her most difficult decision yet when security officials recommended postponing the first transfer indefinitely due to credible terrorist threats. The Queen called an emergency meeting with her closest advisors, including Prince William, Prime Minister Harrison, and the heads of Britain's intelligence services. "Your Majesty," MI6 Director Sarah Coleman reported grimly, "we have identified at least 3 separate plots to steal or destroy the diamond during transport. The risk assessment is beyond anything we've dealt with before." Catherine sat quietly for several minutes, weighing the risks against the historic opportunity. "Director Coleman, what would be required to make the transport acceptably safe?" "A security operation involving the military forces of all participating nations, sir. The cost would be enormous, and even then we couldn't guarantee complete safety." Prince William reached for Catherine's hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll support completely. But remember that King Charles always said the monarchy's greatest strength was its ability to evolve and take calculated risks." Catherine made her decision. "We proceed as planned. The first exhibition will open in Delhi in 6 months. If we let fear stop us now, we'll never move forward. The Kohinoor has survived wars, revolutions, and centuries of conflict. It's time for it to become a symbol of peace instead of division." The announcement sent shockwaves around the world. For the first time in its recorded history, the legendary Kohinoor diamond would leave British custody to begin an unprecedented journey that would test the very foundations of international cooperation. The morning of the Kohinoor's departure from London marked one of the most complex security operations in modern history. At 4 a.m., when the streets of London were still quiet, a convoy of armored vehicles surrounded the Tower of London. The operation involved over 500 security personnel from 5 different nations, each with their own protocols and concerns. Catherine stood in the tower's jewel house, watching as the Kohinoor was carefully removed from its display case for the first time in decades. The diamond, weighing 105.6 carats and cut into an oval brilliant shape, seemed to capture every ray of light in the room. Master jeweler Thomas Hartwell, whose family had served the crown for 4 generations, personally supervised the diamond's placement into its specially designed transport case. "Your Majesty," Hartwell said softly, "this is the most nerve-wracking moment of my career. This diamond has been in British custody for 175 years. Letting it go, even temporarily, feels like losing a part of our national identity." Catherine understood his emotions. "Mr. Hartwell, sometimes we must risk what we treasure most to gain something even more valuable. True partnership and respect from our Commonwealth family." The transport case itself was a marvel of modern technology, containing climate controls, shock absorbers, and tracking devices that would monitor the diamond's location every second of its journey. The case was designed to survive a nuclear explosion, according to its manufacturers, though everyone hoped such resilience wouldn't be necessary. Prince William accompanied Catherine to Heathrow Airport, where a specially modified RAF aircraft waited. The plane had been equipped with additional security features and would be escorted by fighter jets throughout the journey to Delhi. The international media coverage was unprecedented. Over 200 journalists from around the world reported on the diamond's departure. "Catherine," William said as they stood beside the aircraft, "you've accomplished something extraordinary. Regardless of what happens next, You've proven that the monarchy can evolve and adapt to changing times. The flight to Delhi took 8 hours, during which Catherine barely slept. She spent much of the journey reviewing security protocols and speaking with officials from all participating nations via secure communications. The weight of responsibility was enormous. If anything happened to the Kohinoor during transport, it would destroy decades of diplomatic progress. Dr. Priya Sharma, the historian who had once protested outside Parliament, was among the delegation of Indian officials who greeted Catherine at Delhi airport. Her presence symbolized how much attitudes had shifted since the Queen's first announcement about wearing the Kohinoor at her coronation. "Your Majesty," Dr. Sharma said, "6 months ago I carried a sign demanding the return of our Mountain of Light. Today, I'm here to thank you for finding a way to honor both our heritage and yours." The National Museum of Delhi had been transformed for the Kohinoor exhibition. The entire building had been upgraded with state-of-the-art security systems, and a special climate-controlled chamber had been constructed to house the diamond. The exhibition design told the complete story of the Kohinoor, from its legendary origins in the Golconda mines to its current status as a symbol of international cooperation. The opening ceremony drew dignitaries from across the Commonwealth, but Catherine insisted that the first visitors should be ordinary citizens, particularly children and students.
9-year-old Arjun Gupta from a Delhi primary school was chosen to be the first person to view the Kohinoor in its new home. "It's so beautiful,"
Arjun whispered as he peered at the diamond through its protective glass. "My teacher said it used to belong to Indian kings. Does this mean it's coming home?" Catherine knelt beside the boy. "Arjun, the wonderful thing about this diamond is that it belongs to all of us now. It will travel to different countries so everyone can learn about its amazing history." The exhibition's popularity exceeded all expectations. In its first week, over 100,000 people visited the museum, with queues stretching for blocks around the building. International media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, with many commentators praising Catherine's innovative approach to addressing colonial legacy issues. However, not everyone was pleased with the arrangement. A small but vocal group of British politicians continued to criticize the Queen's decision. Lord Pemberton organized a petition calling for the diamond's immediate return, arguing that the precedent was dangerous for Britain's cultural heritage. "If we allow this today," Pemberton declared in the House of Lords, "tomorrow there will be demands for the return of every artifact in the British Museum. The Queen has opened Pandora's box." But Catherine had anticipated such criticism and had prepared a comprehensive response. During a televised address to the nation, she explained her vision. "The critics ask about precedent, but I ask about progress. For too long, we've allowed historical grievances to fester rather than addressing them constructively. The Kohinoor arrangement proves that we can honor our past while building a better future." The success of the Delhi exhibition encouraged the other participating nations. Pakistan began preparing the Lahore Museum for its turn to host the diamond, while Iran and Afghanistan worked on their own exhibition plans. The rotating arrangement was becoming a model for international cultural cooperation. Prince William visited Catherine in Delhi during the exhibition's second month. Together, they toured the museum and spoke with visitors from dozens of countries who had traveled specifically to see the Kohinoor. The couple was particularly moved by a group of elderly Sikh pilgrims from Punjab who had saved for months to make the journey. "This diamond has caused so much pain in our history," said Sardar Singh, an 80-year-old farmer whose ancestors had lived through the British annexation of Punjab. "But seeing it here with our own stories being told alongside it brings some healing to old wounds." As the Delhi exhibition entered its final months, preparations intensified for the diamond's next journey to Lahore. The Pakistan government had initially approached the arrangement with skepticism, but the positive international reaction to the Delhi exhibition had convinced them to embrace the opportunity fully. Catherine made the decision to personally accompany the Kohinoor to each new location, understanding that her presence sent a powerful message about Britain's commitment to the partnership. The Queen's role was evolving from a traditional monarch to something unprecedented, a global ambassador for reconciliation and cultural cooperation. The success of the Delhi exhibition had proven that Catherine's revolutionary approach could work. But the real test would come as the diamond continued its journey through nations with even more complex relationships with Britain's colonial past. 2 years after Queen Catherine's controversial coronation with the Kohinoor diamond, the world watched as the legendary gem completed its first full rotation through all participating nations and returned to London. The homecoming was unlike anything in British royal history. Representatives from India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan joined thousands of Londoners in welcoming back the diamond that had become a symbol of international cooperation rather than colonial conquest. The transformation had been remarkable. What began as a source of diplomatic tension had evolved into the most successful cultural exchange program of the modern era. The International Crown Jewels Commission reported that over 5 million people had visited the Kohinoor exhibitions across all 5 locations, making it the most viewed diamond in human history. Catherine stood once again in the Tower of London's Jewel House, watching as Master Jeweler Hartwell carefully placed the Kohinoor back in its London display case. The diamond seemed unchanged by its travels, still capturing and reflecting light with the same mysterious beauty that had captivated rulers for centuries. "Your Majesty," Hartwell said, his voice filled with emotion, "when this diamond left London 2 years ago, I thought we might never see it again. Now I understand that letting it go was what brought it truly home." The new permanent exhibition at the Tower told a story that previous displays had never attempted. Visitors could trace the Kohinoor's complete journey through time and culture. From ancient Persian legends through Mughal splendor, Sikh valor, British imperial ambition, and finally to its current status as a bridge between nations. Dr. Elizabeth Crawford, director of the International Commission, compiled the program's achievements in a comprehensive report that would influence cultural policy worldwide. The Kohinoor's journey proved that contested cultural artifacts don't have to remain sources of division, she wrote. When handled with respect, transparency, and genuine partnership, they can become powerful tools for healing historical wounds. The success had broader implications beyond the diamond itself. The British Museum announced plans to explore similar arrangements for other contested artifacts, including discussions with Greece about the Parthenon sculptures and with Egypt about various ancient treasures. Catherine's initiative had sparked a global conversation about cultural repatriation and shared heritage. Prince William had returned permanently from his military deployment and stood beside Catherine as they reviewed letters from around the Commonwealth. The correspondence revealed the profound impact of the Kohinoor's journey on ordinary citizens who had experienced their cultural heritage being acknowledged and respected for the first time. "Listen to this one," Catherine said, reading from a handwritten letter. "It's from Fatima, that young Pakistani student we met in Lahore." She writes, "Your Majesty, when I saw the Kohinoor in our museum surrounded by the story of my ancestors, I felt pride instead of loss for the first time. Thank you for giving us back our dignity along with our diamond." The economic impact had been substantial as well. Each hosting location experienced significant increases in tourism, with visitors coming specifically to see the Kohinoor and staying to explore local culture and history. The city of Lahore saw a 300% increase in international visitors during its hosting period, while Delhi's National Museum became the most visited cultural site in South Asia. However, the program's success hadn't silenced all critics. Some British traditionalists continued to argue that the precedent was dangerous, while a few voices in the participating countries claimed the arrangement didn't go far enough toward addressing colonial grievances. Catherine had learned to accept that complete consensus was impossible, but the overwhelming positive response vindicated her approach. The Queen made a significant announcement during the diamond's homecoming ceremony. The rotating exhibition program would continue, but with expanded scope. Other historically significant items from the crown jewels would join future rotations, and additional countries with cultural connections would be invited to participate. The Kohinoor taught us that sharing our treasures makes them more valuable, not less, Catherine declared to the assembled dignitaries. "We are expanding this model because the world has shown us that cooperation creates more lasting wealth than competition." As the ceremony concluded, Catherine reflected on the journey that had begun with her controversial decision to wear the Kohinoor at her coronation. King Charles had believed in modernizing the monarchy while respecting tradition, But even he might have been surprised by how radically his daughter-in-law had transformed royal diplomacy. The evening news programs across the Commonwealth featured stories about the Kohinoor's return, but the focus had shifted from controversy to celebration. The diamond that once symbolized imperial conquest had become proof that former adversaries could work together for mutual benefit. Late that night, Catherine stood alone in her private study, looking out over London. A secure video call connected her with the prime ministers of India and Pakistan, along with senior officials from Iran and Afghanistan. They were planning the next phase of cultural exchanges, discussing which artifacts would travel next and how to include more nations in the partnership. "Your Majesty," Prime Minister Modi said from Delhi, "when you first proposed this arrangement, many of us were skeptical, but you've proven that the Commonwealth can be more than a reminder of colonial history. It can be a foundation for genuine partnership." Pakistani President Khan, who had initially opposed the entire concept, added his own reflection. "The Kohinoor's journey showed our people that Britain was willing to acknowledge our shared past honestly. This trust has opened doors for cooperation we never thought possible." Catherine smiled, remembering the weight of the crown on her coronation day and the doubts that had plagued her decision to wear the controversial diamond. Sometimes the greatest risks lead to the greatest rewards. The Kohinoor has taught us all that treasures become more precious when they're shared with those who understand their true value. As the call ended, Catherine picked up a photograph from her desk, a picture of herself wearing the Kohinoor crown on coronation day, surrounded by uncertainty and controversy. Now that same diamond rested peacefully in its London home, but it was no longer a source of division. Instead, it had become proof that even the most complex historical grievances could be addressed through courage, creativity, and genuine respect for all perspectives. The Kohinoor's journey was complete, but the transformation it had sparked was just beginning. Queen Catherine had not only modernized the monarchy, she had shown the world a new way to heal the wounds of history while honoring the dignity of every culture touched by the past.